What's happening, everybody? It's Shawn with reactions to the classics, and today we got 11 songs for the Easter season brought to us by our friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, Scott. Thank you, Scott. I've already gone over this list. It's fantastic the way Scott put it together. Scott's been in the pastoring world a long time ago. I was in the pastoring world. We're obviously both Christians, so this list and the way he put it together is just fantastic. But I'm going to let him tell you the story of it. So here's what Scott said about this. In the modern Western world, the Easter holiday has, like Christmas, been diluted into near insignificance. Bunnies and colored eggs and jelly beans and marshmallows are cute and tasty and fun, but as symbols of Easter, they steer our collective attention far from the original significance of the season. Even so, one doesn't have to be a Christian to recognize that the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth are the most consequential 33 years in human history. Western civilization was built in part on the foundation of the Jewish and Christian scriptures, as well as on the life and teachings of Jesus. Admittedly, that foundation is crumbling around us as we find our culture varying drastically from the principles of morality established in the Bible by God Himself. That said, even the average American Christian doesn't quite grasp the monumental nature of Jesus' torturous death and His miraculous physical resurrection from the grave. If Jesus is not raised from the dead, as described in the New Testament, then the Bible and our Christian faith is simply foolishness. The Apostle Paul says as much in his first letter to the Corinthian church when he writes that, quote, "If Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith." 1 Corinthians 15:14 is where you'll find that. The death and resurrection of Jesus only tells part of the story, however. Questions arise: why did God find it necessary to insert Himself into human history in the person of Jesus? Why did Jesus willingly endure such a cruel punishment, even though He had committed no crime, no sin whatsoever? Why is the resurrection of Jesus so vital for us as humans? What was the point? With this list of songs, we'll not only look at the death and resurrection of Jesus, but we'll start with the reason why we needed this Savior in the first place. We'll also find that there is a joyful culmination for those who embrace Jesus and His sacrifice and His victory over death. The order of the songs will lead us through the story. This will be evident as we go, and I'm going to tell you what, this had to take Scott a long time because the way he did it is just, I know I already said it, but it's fantastic. The artists and bands on this list are familiar friends who appeared on some of my other lists: Michael Card, The Lost Dogs, Daniel Amos, Phil Keaggy, and John Michael Talbot all make return appearances. But there are a few names here as well. There are a few new names here as well. The emphasis is on the journey, my goal being to find songs that best depict the story. The music style from song to song is pretty diverse, ranging from singer-songwriter to Americana to country to a couple of songs that qualify as intentionally medieval, even Gregorian in style. And as always, there's no best or worst here. The story within the music is what's important. Man, I'm so looking forward to this, guys. The music won't be in the video. Check out the Vimeo link below so you can listen along. That is the idea of a journey like this. And as you see below, we're going to start out with Michael Card, Older Than the Rain from the Hidden Face of God album in 2006. Scott says singer-songwriter and theologian Michael Card takes us back to the first time humankind freely chose to go their own way rather than trust their Creator to guide them. In Christian history, this moment is understood as original sin, a willful decision whose effects have rippled through every human heart from that day to this. With these lyrics, Card addresses a deeply felt grief that immediately set in as the first people realized their fatal mistake, a sorrow that was felt not only within the first perpetrators, but within the entire human race ever since. I'm convinced that every human being since then, myself included, Scott says, and myself included, suffers an underlying grief for our separation from our Heavenly Father. We may not recognize it as such, and we may not acknowledge it, but if we look around us, we can't deny that we in our grief are seeking any measure of relief and comfort, a comfort that Jesus came to provide us. Jesus says as much in Matthew 11:28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." It goes 28 through 30 on that. All right, have the lyrics up as always. Thank you, Scott. Older Than the Rain, Michael Card. Great musicianship on this, great guitar work, just and a great story, of course. It's talking about the garden. In Eden, the darkening sky, or in Eden, the darkening garden was still unwet by all the tears from the sky. The burden of that disobedient bite brought all the tears the fallen world would cry. The unwelcome tears that they never had known coursed down their fallen faces in surprise. All they'd ever seen was the light of His face. But now the sin had entered in, their tears would fall like rain. And then that chorus, falling tears from fallen eyes, our faces with an unaccustomed stain. We were driven from the garden beneath a cloudless sky. For human tears are older than the rain. Human tears are older than the rain. So a fantastic song, a great way to start, and establishing original sin. Why did Jesus come? Well, we got to understand there's a reason for it. To start with, I order the next song up, The Lust, the Flesh, the Eyes, and the Pride of Life by Lost Dogs from their Mutt album in 2004. Scott says in his first letter, the Apostle John writes that all that is in this world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and the pride of life, is not from the Father, but it's from the world. That's in 1 John 2:16. Sin is so pervasive in all of us that we find ourselves affected by it in practically every area of our lives, Scott says, even in aspects we don't typically think of in such terms. The lyrics of this song get to the heart of our self-centeredness, self-absorption, and self-promotion, all resulting from the root of sin that resides within each of us. The track comes from an album of cover songs previously written and recorded by members of the Lost Dogs and their respective bands. This song was written by Mike Rowe for his band, the 77s. Here it's reimagined and sung by Terry Scott Taylor, who sings in the first person about his need to possess, to be recognized, and to be congratulated. But he also acknowledges how such self-absorption drains the life right out of me. The bigger lesson here is that we are, each of us, prisoners of our own self-promotion. I mean, Scott's write-ups are just so good and so biblical, man. Wow, the lust, the flesh, the eyes, the pride of life. What a well-written song. He starts, I just got to read you the lyrics. I mean, the instrumentation was perfect. It was low-key. The harmonies are fantastic, but the lyrics are the star. Well, I feel like I have to feel something good all of the time. With most of life, I cannot deal, but a good feeling I can feel, even though it may not be real. And if a person, place, or thing can deliver, I will quiver with delight. But it will last me for all my life, or just what? But will it last me for all of my life, or just one more lonely night? The lust, the flesh, the eyes, and the pride of life drain the life right out of me. And this is what, I think so many, the song's about idolatry, right? Obviously, the Bible tells us we should put all of our trust in Jesus and in God. And if we're getting our good feelings or looking for comfort anywhere other than that, it's fool's gold. And it's, well, I see something and I want it, bam, right now. No questions asked. Don't worry how much it costs me now or later. I want it and I want it fast. I'll go to any length, sacrifice all that I already have and all that I might get just to get something more that I don't need. And Lord, please don't ask me what for. And so it's that thing of where, you get a good feeling when you get something new, but that feeling goes away quickly. So now I got to have something else new. And it's a slippery slope, right? It brings us into all kinds of sin. And then he just talks about how, and I love it when folks look right at me and what I'm doing or have done and lay it on about how groovy I am. Remember, this is written in 77. Groovy was a really well used word then. And then I'm looking grand, and every single word makes me think I'll live forever, never knowing that they probably won't remember what they said tomorrow. Tomorrow I could be dead. So he wants that human adulation, but that's a fleeting thing, right? What have you done for me lately is the way this world works. Next up at number 3, we got another Michael Card song, this time Come to the Table from the album Known by the Scars in 1985. Scott says, the night before he was to be tortured and executed on a Roman cross, Jesus met with his closest friends, shared the Passover meal with them, and left them with some important parting thoughts, a heartfelt prayer, and a couple of ominous predictions about their actions in the coming hours. This meeting has famously come to be known as the Last Supper. This track from Michael Card depicts the meeting and the significance of the Lord's Supper for everyone who would come to believe in Jesus throughout the ensuing 2,000 years. Card makes a connection for us that links the symbolism of the bread and the wine to the forgiveness offered each of us through the death of Jesus. This song appeared on Scott's Michael Card list a few months ago, but he believed it had to be included in this story. Come to the Table, just really, there's not anything I can add to this, right? If you're focused, it's hard to focus on the lyrics, I know, if you're watching along and, just enjoy the music. But, the lyrics are just so well written, right? Card just writes these so well. They exactly tell the story of the Last Supper, and he freely offers, we freely receive them, talking about, the bread and the wine. Come to the table and taste of the glory and savor the sorrow. He's dying tomorrow. Here at the table sit those who have loved him. One is a traitor and one will deny him. He's lived his life for them all, and for all he'll be crucified. And just telling you, come to the table is prepared for you. The bread of forgiveness, the wine of release, that's the repeating motif. So theologically, it's so awesome. It's just so well done. The music or the instrumentation is just perfect. That acoustic in there is great. It's got a nice build. So just a really, really well done song, really well chosen by Scott as we start to unveil and tell this story. Next up, we got Paradise by Brian Duncan from the At the Foot of the Cross, Volume 2 in 1995 album. Scott says, ever since I saw the film The Passion of the Christ, I'm continually reminded and amazed that in the midst of such excruciating torture, Jesus could still consider the life of a common thieving and probably murderous slave that hung on a cross next to his own. But there he was, responding in kindness and mercy to an admitted criminal, expressing last-minute remorse and faith in this innocent man. Certainly any one of us will be welcomed in the embrace of Jesus if we simply admit that obvious truth, that we are sinners undeserving of such love and grace. The singer on this track is Brian Duncan, who's best known in the Christian music world for his work in the 80s in a band called Sweet Comfort Band. He enjoyed some radio success as a solo artist into the 90s as well. This track, however, comes from an album that is the second volume of 2 theme albums written and produced by Derry Daughtry and Steve Hindalong of The Choir and later of the Lost Dogs. And one of the little points there that Scott made, I've told this to people many times, it's never too late, right? The thief is about to die, literally. He's just minutes or hours away, really hours away in the crucifixion from dying. And Jesus says that he will see him in paradise. So it's never too late, guys. Let's check it out. Paradise, Brian Duncan, really well done song. Really enjoyed it. I will tell you this, if you're looking for lyrics to this song, I have lyrics up to this on Genius and I looked on a couple different other sites as it was going on there. Like, they're lyrics to a song called Paradise. They're not this song. They're wrong on all the sites I looked at. But, I was listening to it. The story is exactly right. Like, paradise, man, that's what we're promised. Paradise, something that we can't even imagine, right? We can't even wrap our head around it because it's nothing like any paradise here on earth. But got to come to him now. Just a really well done song there by Brian Duncan. Now, back to another Lost Dogs song off the same album, Mutt, in 2004. We got Beautiful Scandalous Night. Scott says, one of the great paradoxes of the Christian story is that the greatest results come from some of the darkest moments. Yeah, that's true in my own life, Scott says, and I guarantee it's true in mine too, as it's true in the lives of Christians throughout the centuries, as it was true in this darkest of events, the crucifixion of Jesus. That the God of creation, the ruler of the universe, would become a human being, live the only perfect life in history, only to be beaten, tortured, and crucified, was certainly the darkest moment in human history. But that bloody sacrifice paved the way for the release we can now enjoy, a freedom from our own self-destructive self-interest. This track is also a reimagined cover that was written and released by Steve Hindalong and Derry Daughtry on the first At the Cross album in 1993. Here, Mike Rowe of the Lost Dogs takes the lead vocal. I really like that first Lost Dogs track, the lust, the flesh, the eyes, and the pride of life. So I expect a lot from this one. Lost Dogs, Beautiful Scandalous Night. Second song we've already had off their album, Mud. I'm going to have to check out that album at some point. This is just such a well-done song, so beautiful. I liked in one part, all the instrumentation stopped, and you just got the acapella, so you could really be drawn into the words. Didn't do it right away in the song, right? Because that's a really good tactic, right? Get you into the song and then stop it and let you just hear the words, and it makes you really draw in. If you start out that way, sometimes people aren't paying attention as much. But at the wonderful, magic, tragic, mysterious tree, on that beautiful, scandalous night, you and me were atoned by his blood and forever washed white on that beautiful, scandalous night. It's one of those weird things, like the crucifixion's the greatest tragedy in the history of mankind, yet it was predestined and had to happen, or we couldn't have spent eternity with Jesus, those of us that believe in him. So it's kind of that weird thing, right? Where it's horrible, yet it's also glorious all at the same time. So I think this song did a pretty good job of conveying that. Now we're to Maker of the Universe, Phil Keaggy, way back home in 1986. We have some Phil stuff up. We have a top 10. Just so talented. Scott says in St. Paul's letter to the Colossian church, he writes that, quote, Jesus is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. That's Colossians 1:15 and 16. Scott says, with this track, the lyrics of which are adapted from a poem written in the early 20th century, Phil reminds us of a remarkable paradox, that Jesus, the creator of all things, was crucified and speared in the side, the elements of which he himself formed. Think about that. Everything that happened to him was by things that he helped form. It's another track that was included on a previous list, but once again, it has to be included here as well. The Maker of the Universe, what I've become so accustomed to with Phil is just that tremendous, beautiful acoustic guitar. It just has a different sound to it, man, whenever he plays it. It's so good. And this was just delving out what Scott said. I mean, it's amazing to think, that everything that Jesus went about and everything that happened to him was of his own making, as far as like the materials and the hill and the wood and the tree and obviously the spear and the grave. And it's just awe-inspiring to think about, he is the creator. He He created everything. And with that, when you have faith in him, you can have comfort in knowing that his promise is true, right? Everything is going to happen just the way he said it is. And you're going to spend eternity with him in paradise. Just a beautiful song. Now we're going to go to He Is Risen from John Michael Talbot and Terry Talbot from the No Longer Strangers album in 1983. Scott says, in Luke chapter 24, read one of the accounts of the resurrection of Jesus. There exists all sorts of debate among skeptics as to whether Jesus really raised from the dead or not. Of course, we who are followers of Jesus hold this event as the truest of true events. If the resurrection of Jesus is not true, we are not forgiven our sin. We are not free from our corrupt and sin-filled selves. We are lost in our sin, and we are not the new creation that Paul writes about. There's plenty of external and historical evidence supporting the truth of Jesus' resurrection, but the most telling confirmation of this greatest of all events is that there are 2,000 years worth of believers and their transformed lives to attest to the reality that Jesus is indeed alive and well. This track from John Michael Talbot and his brother Terry simply retells a story from Luke 24. The album No Longer Strangers was the brothers' final collaboration. He Is Risen, John Michael Talbot and his brother Terry. Lyrically, just a nice little song. Got that kind of grandness to us whenever the harmony part comes on. He's risen, he is not here. Today is the day salvation's favored you. He is risen, he's not here. The very last part of it, go now and proclaim to the nations, make disciples of all the world. Go now and proclaim the kingdom, every knee will bow. So he's talking about Matthew 28 stuff, right before Jesus ascended. This was the call that he gave. This was the command, the challenge he gave to his disciples. Stand there, go and make disciples of all the world. And then it finishes, baptize in the name of the Father, the Son, the Spirit. Every knee will bow, every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Just a really nice 2-minute 45-second song that just if you're a Christian, it just makes you feel good. Now up to song number 8. Remember, there's 11 of these. Remember, they're not in order either. They're telling a story. We got Images of Faith by Marty McCall from the Images of Faith album in 1997. He's going to appear again in a couple tracks, just FYI. Scott says the resurrection of Jesus is unquestionably the foremost event in the history of the Christian church. Yet it also takes its place among other events we look to that are symbols or images of our faith. Not all of these images are fun to reflect upon, but they're important just the same. This track, Marty McCall, gives us some of these images culminating in the death and resurrection of Jesus. Marty spent a good deal of his early career in a couple of Christian bands, but his work with the vocal trio First Call brought him some notoriety as the band enjoyed considerable radio success. In 1997, McCall wrote and recorded this album, Images of Faith, to express his growing love for more ancient sources of musicianship, both vocally and instrumentally. The result in this record, which employs instruments used in the Renaissance and medieval periods of Western history. The vocals are equally unusual, especially when contrasted with the Christian music popular in the 90s. Okay, with that build-up, I am very curious to hear this, and it's actually the next song that's going to be from the same album as well. Images of Faith, Marty McCall. He starts out talking about Adam and Eve, Noah's Ark, the rainbow, and just kind of continues on through there. The rolling away of the stone, the rejoicing on Resurrection Day. Just so well done. And I think Scott said it well at the start. And we got to remember, some of these images of faith are not something that's a pleasant thing, right? I mean, the perfect example I'll tell you is the cross. Lots of people wear cross necklaces. They're on churches, almost every church, not all churches, but a lot of churches. Imagine if you drove by buildings, like going down the street on an afternoon, and you just see these big bronze electric chairs hanging up there, right? You'd be like, what is wrong with you? People wearing little electric chairs around. Like, we can't even process. They say the crucifixion was the most painful method of death ever in human history, right? And that's what we're glorifying, because Christ did that for us. Like, we can't even process it, right? So if we took someone from 2,000 years ago and drove them around, they'd be like, what in the world are these things? Why is the cross up there? They probably actually go, why in the world how are we driving around? But you know what I'm saying? They're going to look at that cross and go like, I can't believe that's up there. So we got to remember, man, these images of faith are both great things and also time for somber reflection, but they can both be in that same reflection. It's somber, but it's also great. And that's what Easter means. It's a somber moment because Christ had to die, but it's also great because now if you're a believer in Jesus and a follower of Jesus, you get to spend all eternity with him. Now up to the 9th track, we got, I don't know how to say this guy's name. It's either Caedmon. I'm going to go with Caedmon. Caedmon's hymn, Christ is Risen. Marty McCall, same album, Image of Faith, 1997. Scott says, with this almost Gregorian sounding track, Marty McCall reminds us that the same Jesus who died and was raised from the dead is also the warden of the universe. I include this song to remind us that we who are Christians are intrinsically connected to the same God who spoke worlds into being and who authored life itself and designed the intricacies of all living things. This is the God who sacrificed himself for us. The first part of the song comes from a poem that was composed sometime in the 5th century. Some experts consider this poem the earliest example of Old English literature. The author of the poem, Caedmon, was supposedly an illiterate cowherder who was miraculously empowered to write songs and sing them in honor of God. But as far as anyone can tell, this was his only composition. Well, it ought to be good then. What a song. I really enjoyed that. Both Caedmon's hymn and then just the last minute and a half of that Christ is risen. It builds you from, Caedmon's hymn is given the foundation of Christianity and stuff that Jesus did into this, the Christ is risen, the Gregorian chant. Like, it all just worked, man, right? It all just brought you in. I just imagine being in this old school church and the light just kind of coming through the windows a little bit, and you're just in it, man. You're in the presence of the Spirit. So, I mean, that was a cool song. We got 2 songs left. We're going to go away from Spotify. This one Scott actually had to send me because it's not available on streaming. We got Dear Companion by Mercy River from the Reflections album. It's a compilation album in 1993. Scott says, Jesus' death and resurrection serve as only the beginning for those of us who've embraced his forgiveness and the new life he promises. We now have an eternity to look forward to, an unending life that holds for us an unimaginable future spent doing well. Scott says, I'm not sure what I'll be doing, but it's an eternity spent with no influence of sin or evil. I think of the same stuff. I don't know what I'll be doing, but after his resurrection, Jesus appeared to a wide variety of people in a variety of places in order to assure them that he was in fact very much alive and physical, and that their lives would be forever changed as a result. A lot of accounts say he appeared to over 500 people. I mean, there is tons of eyewitness accounts of this, both people who believed him and people who didn't. Just FYI, that's not in Scott's stuff, but yeah. 40 days after his resurrection, Jesus spent his last few minutes with his disciples and was miraculously taken away. He ascended in front of them. This song, written by Terry Scott Taylor, depicts Jesus' parting words to his friends and communicates both the sorrow of their parting and the joy that awaits them when they and we will be reunited. The track was included on a compilation album of various artists that were at the time recording for the Brainstorm record label. The band Mercy River came and went as a band, having recorded only one album, which was produced by Terry Scott Taylor. Taylor's voice can be heard in the backing vocals. Dear Companion, maybe my favorite song so far on this list, and unfortunately it's not available on streaming for anyone. At least I've got this song, at least I've got it that Scott sent to me. What I liked, I mean, it had a little bit of almost a country tinge to it, just a little bit underlying country tinge, but done in a really good way. Now I must be on my way. In spirit, I will comfort you. So this call and response of this song, I think, is what really lends to just how good it is. You must be strong now. Watch and pray, my love, my dear companions. This is Jesus talking to you. Be faithful to the very end, and I'll prepare a place for you. And I promise I will come again, my love, my dear companion. And then the thing that repeats a couple times, please don't cry, though this may be your darkest night. Wipe the tears from your eyes and dress in virgin white. You will live to see the day I take you home, my dear companion. And though this parting brings you pain, you must let your heart be still. In silence, I will speak your name, my love, my dear companion. In other words, I like that part of it because we are not promised that this life is going to be great, right? We're promised that we're going to have difficulty in this life. And he's just encouraging you here that don't worry about it, man. It's going to be fine. All right, we're up to the last track. It's track number 11 on here. Remember, just once again, a reminder, these are not ranked in order from Scott. They're ranked in kind of telling and unfolding a story. We have Soon by Daniel Amos from the Revelation in 1986. Scott says this track was originally written and recorded in 1986 on the Revelation, an album that included the second side of Daniel Amos's Shotgun Angel album from 1977. The songs there depict an end-time scenario and was narrated by Calvary Chapel pastor Chuck Smith. Over the years, the song has gotten lost in the wider library of Daniel Amos and Terry Scott Taylor. It's too bad because it's one of my favorite Daniel Amos tunes, and Scott knows these guys inside and out. So with this song, Terry Scott Taylor rehashes for us the vision of the Apostle John as he was granted a glimpse into heaven and what he saw there. Taylor's refrain is an echo of what John writes at the close of his revelation and echoes the longing of every believer. Quote, look, I am coming soon. My reward is with me, and I will give to each person according to what they have done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. The Spirit and the bride say, come. And the last one who hears say, come. Let the one who is thirsty come, and let the one who wishes take the free gift of the water of life. Revelation 22, 12, 13, and 17. Soon by Daniel Amos. An absolutely perfect way to end this list off. And I know Scott spent a lot of time doing this, and he got this exactly right, because this song sums it all up. And one of my favorite songs on here, so well done with the musicianship on this thing. He talks about at the start, the river flows from the throne of God, passing by the tree of life, and in this place no candle burns, for the Lamb shall be our light. And that is the way it ends, right? That's the way the song ends, the same way it starts. But he goes on in this, see the holy city coming down from heaven. There will be no tears, no night. He will reign. We will reign with him in raiment shining white. And we say, come, Lord. And he says, my reward is me. And we say, come, Lord. And he says, I am the first and the last. The bride cries, even so, when will my love return? We say, come, Lord. And he says, soon. We will see his face. He will speak our name. He'll wipe our tears away. He shall be our God. We will be his own, and his love will light our way. There will be no sorrow. There will be no mourning. These vanquished on that day. Yes, come quickly, Lord, the bride and spirit say. And that, boys and girls, is the idea of Easter, right? That Jesus Christ came and died on a cross. And so you don't have to, right? So this is your final resting place, right? Forever alive in heaven with God. This is what happens at the end times. This is where you go. And this is why there's nothing more important that you'll ever do than to accept this, right? That the Holy Spirit works in you. So if you don't know Jesus, that's my prayer for you as we're in Easter season now. I don't know when you're watching this video. If you're watching this video, the odds are overwhelming that you are a Christian, but maybe you're just a fan of this channel or an artist that is on here. But this list was so well put together, and this song is such a culmination of it. It is absolutely fantastic. That's going to bring me into my favorite tracks. It's always difficult on Scott's list. All these things are written for the glory of God. It's hard to pick faves, right? Because I don't want to diminish any artist or any message of any songs. But for me, my faves are going to be The Lust of the Flesh, The Eyes, and The Pride of Life by Lost Dogs. It was the second song on here. I just think, it so honestly confronts the fact of idolatry, and where we're all seeking comfort in other places and glory than in Jesus. We all do it, and we all will, right? That it's always going to be a constant fight. That is human nature. Let's see. Also, Ketemon's hymn, Christ is Risen, from Marty McCall. Dear Companion from Mercy River, that fantastic song we heard before this one. And of course, Soon by Daniel Amos. I will throw an honorable mention in there to Come to the Table by Michael Card, because I thought the lyricism on there was next level. All right. Appreciate everybody for watching. Appreciate Scott for spending so much time putting this together. This isn't just picking your 11 favorite songs about Easter, right? He really put some time into this thing to make sure it theologically aligned and kind of in order, telling a story. It's just so well done. Thank you to all the patrons. If you guys support us anyway, check out the Patreon link below or the Patreon link on the end screen. Until next time, guys, I will see you.